Hello, welcome. My username is Raynarde. You can call me Ray. And hey, bring it in, champ. Is that camera equipment smell? Is that a new deodorant? Yeah, it smells nice. A friendly reminder to respect other people's boundaries. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I wanted to make a video with a more personal slant and talk about my favorite books, my personal favorite books. And this isn't going to be a sort of tiered number list. These books aren't even going to be in any order. These are my favorite books for a variety of reasons. So if you've come here for a Watch Mojo type affair, I'm sorry, you're going to be disappointed. I'm not even going to say that these are essential reads for you necessarily. As I get older, I'm not good at ranking a lot of media I consume in a specific way. I just like things, and I also have a gauge or a temperature with which I like them. I don't necessarily love everything, but I can appreciate certain aspects of them. But there will be these rare instances where something just hits me at the right time of my life. Something will just come along and I resonate with it. It strikes a chord within me, and for whatever reason, I can never forget it. These books are like ticks, and they're stuck on me, and I just refuse to take them off. That is a gross analogy, and I cannot find a better way to explain it than that. Let's start with probably the oldest book on this list, and that is The Epic of Gilgamesh by Anonymous. Anonymous, an acclaimed writer, and would go on to write such great classics like Arabian Nights, the Poetic Edda, Beowulf, Go Ask Alice. I should check my notes on that. It's a Mesopotamian epic poem about the king of Uruk named Gilgamesh. It's a story of gods and giants and such, but mainly the book is concerned with King Gilgamesh and his transformation from a selfish king to a very good friend to somebody who loses his best friend and becomes frightful of his mortality and his failure in attaining immortality. The ending of the book tells us that immortality isn't something that can necessarily be gained in the ways in which we think. True immortality is the story you leave behind when you're gone, really, the legacy that people remember you by. It's a great theme, and it really grounds my perspective of life and to make the most of it. I read this book in high school, and it blew my mind for a number of reasons. First off, it's pretty incredible that we can read this book today. I mean, I believe it's incomplete. You know, there's some tablets that are just are gone. We don't know if they're even around or if they've been destroyed. Striking thing for me, as somebody who was in private school up until 7th grade, it was crazy that the flood myth was referenced in this book, and I had no idea that other cultures had referenced a great flood also. Opened my mind to other perspectives of the world. Gilgamesh isn't just a great introductory into world literature, but it's also a testament to the human imagination. Even so long ago did we have the ingenuity to craft such wonderful fables and really have some resonating themes that still age well to this day. So Anonymous, if you're out there, I cannot wait to see what you're cooking up. Okay, that joke's getting old. Let's jump forward in time some, and specifically the Roaring 20s. Jazz is the bee's knees, as they say. Fashion was the cat's pajamas. I don't know if this would fly. The economy is in the best shape of its life. I hope that pans out for them. And oh my God, people drank so much alcohol. You probably can't find a book more emblematic of the 20s than The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, who was by all accounts a party animal in his own right. It's the story of a man who falls in with the rich elite of New York and also befriends the enigmatic Jay Gatsby. Gatsby has come back from building his rich empire to reignite the love of his youth with Daisy Buchanan, who is the narrator's cousin. But Daisy is inconveniently married to, and I mean this respectfully, a freaking jerk. But ensues is an affair that leads to some unforeseen consequences. I was one of the rare high schooler kids who actually read the book and really enjoyed it. It helps when you've got a teacher who loves the work and is able to help a high schooler not only read it, but analyze it in a way that makes sense to their developing minds. And that was my experience in junior year of high school. Gatsby is a beautifully written book. It's a wonderful look at the 20s, but also a cautionary tale of unchecked power and the fact that the American dream is basically a fallacy. It's a personal favorite for those reasons, but it's also, I remember as a kid always going to Barnes and Noble, and they always had these giant posters of great works of literature on the wall. And Great Gatsby, with its iconic cover, was one of those. And I don't know what attracted me to that cover, but I knew I wanted to make it a mile marker. And when we were going to read it in high school, I was very pleased. And little did I know it would be one of my favorite books. Next up is a book that was published in the same decade as Gatsby, and that is Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha. This is a book I'd been meaning to read for a very long time, and I finally got around to it and was absolutely floored by its philosophy, despite it being a very simple and easy read. So Siddhartha is set in India, and it follows the titular character, Siddhartha, trying to find enlightenment. As he leaves his village, he falls in with various groups of people at various stages of his life. He discovers something more about himself. He discovers something new and interesting, and knew something about life. The book resonated with me, particularly for its philosophy, as I mentioned before. And that becomes full circle when, in the early portions of the book, Siddhartha and his best friend from his village, they are Buddhist monks at this point in the story. And eventually, the Buddha, Gautama Buddha, the big OG, the grand poobah of Buddhism, is among their ranks. And Buddha's there, doing his thing, talking about enlightenment, how you can attain it by following my simple 4-step plan. I don't know if it's 4 steps, but you get what I'm saying. Siddhartha then makes a startling revelation. He goes to Buddha on a one-on-one conversation, and Siddhartha says, "Yeah, Buddha, honey, yeah, that's great. Love that. Boo, but Buddha." But the thing about following your steps to enlightenment is that it doesn't take into account other people's experiences in life. How can we achieve enlightenment your way when we all have specific roads that we follow that are different from your own? That's a worldview that I share. We all live different lives. We all are born in different circumstances. How can we achieve happiness in a way that's hyper specific to other people? For me, the message is keep your eyes on your paper. Envy is the thief of joy, because then it's dishonest and you're going to be unhappy. And that's not good. We don't want you to be unhappy. We want you to be happy. That's why you needed that hug. And of course, I say this about envy being the thief of joy, and I have to talk about somebody who I wish I could be, and that is Neil Gaiman. He's a writer that I aspire to be, and I don't necessarily mean in subject matter. Neil has written for a wide berth of industries, from television, comics, movies, novels. He's also done kids books, picture books. He's done it all. He looks like he's having a blast. You could tell just by looking at Neil and by listening to him talk about the art of writing that he loves this craft, that he was born for it. It was a tough choice between this book and the Graveyard book as which book really resonated with me. And both books are really good, but I think I kind of personally love Coraline as the children's book that resonates with me the most, even in my adulthood. In the book, young Coraline Jones is a girl, and she and her family move into a large house where a bunch of other people have like sub apartments that are in the house. It's a very weird setup. And so one day, Coraline finds a weird door that's just seemed to go anywhere. But she finds the key eventually, and she goes through, and on the other side of the door is a sort of inverse of her house, whereas her house in the real world is boring and drab, and her parents aren't really paying attention to her. In this inverse world, it's magical. There are talking dogs and rats, and everybody's doting over her. They love her. Her mom actually gives a care about her and such. But the thing that Coraline notices is that all the people have buttons for eyes. But then she starts to kind of discover there's something sinister going on in the underbelly of this whole thing, which leads to a sort of battle of the wits against an evil entity. This book it's short. It's 30,000 words about. But it's a great children's book. This is a book that Neil has said in the past that he spent a lot of time writing, and it shows. It was very carefully written. To add or remove words to this, I feel like would undermine the book. It's a book that really teaches us to face our fears, that even if you are scared, doing something that you're scared to do is still brave. While we're on the subject of Neil's bibliography, I want to cheat a little bit and throw on my favorite comic book that he's done. Probably, actually, I would say my favorite comic book, and that is the fourth arc of the Sandman, Season of Mists, and was just adapted into a Netflix show. The first 2 volumes were adapted for that, which I enjoyed very much. I'm going to make a weird, convoluted story short. Dream is the anthropomorphic personification of dreams. How on brand, right? And Lucifer, the devil, yes, the big guy, yes, stay with me here. The devil has beef with Dream for a variety of reasons. And through a convoluted series of events, Lucifer gives up hell. He kind of is like, I'm done ruling this. He locks the doors up, sends all the demons away and all the tortured souls, and gives the key to Dream. And word travels fast in this metaphysical universe, and all these mythological and religious figures come to Dream's doorstep and sue for hell. They want this property. Neil has this funny story that he talked about, and that is that he wished he could travel back in time and write The Lord of the Rings before J.R.R. Tolkien did. As a kid, he thought that. I don't think he thinks that now. I mean, I don't know. But I kind of feel that way with Season of Mists. It's a concept that is so brilliant and is so well executed. But really, the series as a whole really stood out, and it told the world that, I mean, obviously Alan Moore did it too. Neil's Sandman was a further reminder comics can have the same literary prowess as a novel can. Yeah, it might have pictures, it still has words, you still read it, you still ingest it with your eyes. And it's not just Neil's writing that makes this volume fantastic. Art in this book is astounding. The lettering and the colors are great. The lettering in particular is astounding. Each of the mythical figures has specific word bubbles styled to their aesthetic. Anubis has like hieroglyphic styled word bubbles and text. And Susanoo no Mikoto is in there, and he's drawn like a woodblock painting and such. Publishing is a group effort on many fronts, and Season of Mists is a reminder of when all the creative notes are hit by everybody. Everybody's just on point and they're getting it, and it shows. Well, I hate to bring the mood down on this video, but I have to talk about my next book, and that is Kazuo Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go. I say that because this book is a bummer to read. It is a sad, melancholic book, but written beautifully. Now, I'm not going to summarize this book very well. I feel like anybody who's interested in this book should go in as blind as possible. At its core, it's the story about a woman who is reflecting on her life in this special orphanage and her 2 friends that she makes and grows up with. And that's all I'm going to say. It's one of the saddest books I've ever read in a way that speaks to the human condition about the purpose of a human being, basically what is a soul. Ishiguro is fantastic, develops this world organically, and he's really good at making this voice pop off the page. I love this book because it's a good example of, it doesn't matter the subject matter. There will be books that we come across in our lives that they just stick with you for whatever reason. They're always in your head. You think about them randomly from time to time. And this is one of those books. I finished reading this when my husband was getting a routine medical procedure done. And while he was physically numb to the world, he was getting off of anesthesia, I was mentally numb after reading this book, and it made for an awkward breakfast, needless to say.
We're just here, just living life, and it feels all meaningless. So, can I put you down for just one McChicken, sir?
Next up, we're going to space, and we're going to talk about Dune. Ooh. Did you like that? Was that cool? I see the judges' chairs are still, their backs are still to me, but that will not deter me from my musical career. I know I have the musical chops. Dune is pretty hot right now, with the release of part 2, and I'm jumping on that bandwagon, obviously. But putting aside its recent success, Dune is an important science fiction novel in that I feel like it was an evolution for the genre. Combining space travel with feudal conflicts, Dune tells the story of Paul Atreides, who is heir to a noble house, whose family inherits the desert planet of Arrakis from their rivals, the Harkonnens, but it's a complicated trap. What follows is this political struggle, an ecological study of the planet of Arrakis, and Paul's rising from the ashes, and this dangerous path to becoming the emperor of the galaxy, and also the dangers of messianic figures. It's not the weirdest science fiction tale, but I feel like it's a story that if it didn't exist, I dare say we wouldn't have things the likes of like Star Wars. It was a book that dared to be different enough. It's dense with lore, and there's appendices and indexes in the back, but Frank Herbert tells this story in a way that feels organic, and he tells a complete story with this book. Yes, there's a series that he wrote. He wrote 6 Dune books ultimately, and they get really weird towards the latter half of it. But if you only wanted to read one book, you are totally cool if you read the first one. It was one of the first important pieces of science fiction that I've ever read completely. And I knew full well before going into any of the movies, yes, I've watched both of them, but I knew what happened, and I knew the subject matter before all the hype came up with it. Yeah, I was into Dune before it was hot. So what? We're sticking with sci-fi, and we're going to talk about a recent book I read, and that is The Dispossessed by Ursula Le Guin. Recently, I became a massive fan of Le Guin last year when I read The Left Hand of Darkness and the first Earthsea novel, both of which are fantastic books. But then my third book I read of hers was The Dispossessed, and I fell in love. This was the book that I feel like Le Guin really set herself up and said, I am writer, hear me roar. And again, it's a book that just hit me in the right moment of my life and really made me understand something about society that I kind of knew on a subconscious level, but I didn't know how to express it into words. It's the story about a physicist named Shevek, and he is from a moon, actually, of Anaris, and it was colonized with the understanding that this is going to be a utopia, an anarchist utopia, essentially. So Shevek is raised in this background of this sort of anarchy, but as he gets older and he's a physicist, he's finding these stumbling blocks with his research. He can't really complete his research, and he's curious about Uras, the world with which his society came from. And so he makes friends, pen pals essentially, with physicists on that world, and he decides to take his research there. The problem with Uras is that it is a world that is hyper-capitalist and there's civil wars are raging, and there's inequality in happiness of life. Women don't have rights at all. And so Shevek is horrified by all this, but he still continues his research, and he hopes that he could unite both his own culture and the culture of Urus to be united once again. I wouldn't say this book radicalized me in a weird way. I'm going to show that this passage is on the screen here, and this is the passage that really resonated with me the most. And I remember I read that, and I sat on my couch. Le Guin really tapped into this anxiety I had, that in our capitalist society, and I'm speaking specifically of the United States here, become this breeding ground essentially of selfish gain, that we have to one up each other. But Le Guin is fantastic at looking at both sides, because she poses that an anarchy may not even be the solution to this. Shevek's society has gaps and problems with it as well. I believe the book, when it first was released, had the subtitle An Ambiguous Utopia. This book scratched me in a political philosophical way that I feel like there are others that will do the same, but it's like The Dispossessed was the first. I just wish I could have met Le Guin when she was alive and thank her. To say that, yes, this book tapped into an anxiety also helped me further my responsibility for my society, and that is to be an active member of it and a contributor to it, but to contribute to it in a positive way. And it's only because of reading that I was able to sort of to reaffirm that notion. So those are my personal favorite books and the reasons why I like those books. And this is a list that I feel like is always growing and changing, because as a person, I grow and I change. What are your favorites? Are you going to make a video about your favorites? Are you going to comment down there? Please let me know, because maybe I'll find a new favorite. Maybe I hope I helped you find a new favorite. But that's going to wrap it up for me. I got to go make lunch now before I got to go to work. So I'll catch you all in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.